podcast about all things NASCAR and sim racing. Join your hosts, Elliot, John, Mike, Matt, and Rick to review this weekend at the track.
Each week, they tackle events trackside, news, and of course, the rumor mill. Stay up to date each week by subscribing to The High Line. Brought to you by the iRacing Warrior Network.
So without further delay, move up to the High Line.
All right, welcome to this week's The Highline podcast. This is episode 8, brought to you by the IWM Racing Network. I am Rick Souza, joined tonight with my co-host, Elliot Swope.
I'm here. Sorry, but I'm here.
We're glad that you're here. We appreciate all of the subscribers that have added us to your favorite podcasts, and we appreciate the listen. So tonight we're here to talk about a number of things. First, what happened in sim racing and iRacing with the Tech4Troops Cup series. We just did our 7th race of the season at World Wide Technology Raceway. We had 31 entries, 11 teams competing. It was a good race. It was a struggle at the beginning with, it's a challenging track with an egg-shaped course, and turns 1 and 2 are a heck of a lot tighter than 3 and 4. And we had a ton of downshifting going on, very similar to what you saw in the Sunday race previous with NASCAR in the Cup Series. So you were downshifting from 5 to 4 in turns 3 and 4, and all the way down to 3 in 1 and 2. So that makes it super challenging as part of the iRacing platform, but it was a good race. And the results, Chris Worrell was our winner, Ty Bostic finished in second, and Zach Allen finishes in third. And we just happened to have here in the booth tonight, Chris Worrell, our winner of last week's Tech4Troops event. Chris?
How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Look forward to talking with you guys.
Hi, Chris. You had a really good race the entire time. I know relatively early on, I think it was you and Alonso got together, and you went from first or second, kind of dropped back to about 7th or 8th, I think. I think that's about as far back as you got. If you could, just tell us how your race went, maybe from beginning to end, and how you ran.
Well, the beginning, as y'all remember, we had a couple cautions, so my goal was to just try to stay up front and save a set of tires, mainly because I saw some cautions coming out around after lap 20. I believe people pit and took tires. I kept the same set of tires, so I was trying my best to not push it too hard in case there was more cautions. And I believe it was around lap 40 we started. We got our green flag run to the end, and that's where Alonso and me got together on lap 45. It sent me back to 8th place. I worked hard to get back up there. We had one more caution after that. I was able to get tires, and luckily was able to run Alonso down, who's a very fast driver, and be able to put a little bump and run on him and stay in front of him to the rest of the race. And I got the win. I was pretty excited about it.
It's interesting you mentioned the beginning of the race being a little bit rough. We did have, I think, 5 cautions in about 45 laps. But then after that, which it was a 144-lap race, I believe, really about the last 100 laps, we had 1 caution. So it went from a race of survival and stay up front and stay out of the mess to more of a strategy race. Did you feel it change after those first 5 cautions, and then it kind of went green almost for the rest of the way?
Yeah, it felt like everybody just got, the roughness out of them, and everybody kind of just settled in and was ready for the long haul. And I sure was, because there's nothing more than I wanted to get back to Alonso's bumper after that that last caution there. And from there, I was able to get to him, get around him, and do the best I can to hold him and Ty off. And those are 2 guys that are very good drivers, and they've raced very well. So I'm very happy, being able to pull away with the win, against competitors like themselves. So,
well, you ran up front almost the entire race. You mentioned Alonso. He actually ended up finishing 4th. Zachary Allen, who's another self-proclaimed part-timer, finished 3rd. And really, you and Ty were the class of the field. So congratulations. You had a great race. You are a part-timer with us. I'm going to ask you to remind me here in a second if you ran in season 1 or if it was just last year that you ran with us. But like I said, you're a part-timer. You have a team outside of our league. So if you could, let me go back a little bit. How did you get into iRacing? How long have you been in on the platform?
Well, I got my membership in 2014 on a laptop and an Xbox controller. So I really didn't know what I was doing then. I just knew I wanted to race really bad. And, did mostly the street stocks, the ovals with the controller, and did really well with that. Got the I rating up, got the safety rating up, and, you get into faster cars, that controller just can't hold it anymore. So I spent a break between 2014 to 2017, and that's when I got my first wheel, which is a Logitech G27 is what I started off with. And, just picked up from there, got into it, started racing a lot, started meeting a lot of good guys through the official racing. Ended up meeting good friends that I've known for a while now through there, and they've helped me get better. And, met a lot of cool people, including yourselves, along the way. And I'm glad to still be doing it.
So you've been on the service about 9 years total. You said you took a break for 3 years. Have you been racing pretty steady since 2017 then?
Yeah, pretty steady. I'm trying to get in a little more into it now. Lately, I've been doing nothing but league races. I run in the FCRL League, which is on Wednesday nights, and IES, iRacing E-Series, which is a super speedway league, on Friday nights. So, I've been trying to find more stuff to get into here lately. And, the way iRacing Warriors, this league works, sometimes we'll have some off days where I come race with you guys. And like last season, there was a part in FCRL where we didn't race for a good a month or two, and I was able to meet everybody in IWM and race with you guys, and just ended up meeting a bunch of cool people. And anytime I can race with you guys on Wednesdays, I'd love to show up.
Well, we're more than glad to have you jump in anytime you want. I think when a person of your character and your ability to do what you can do on the service as well, I think it helps all of our drivers learn a little bit, and it obviously raises the competition as well at the same time.
I appreciate that.
What part of the country are you from? Where are you from?
I'm out of Suffolk, Virginia. Lived in Norfolk most of my life, and lived in Suffolk most of my life, and also Norfolk. So not too far. Living out of the state or anything, but just been here on the coast. I traveled a lot as in a touring band, so I've been able to travel the country and do some pretty cool things. But Suffolk, Virginia is home to me, that's for sure.
Touring band. So what instrument would that be?
I played drums. I play about everything, but play drums for the bands, all the metal bands.
Well,
yeah.
Someday we'll have to have a drum off when we're within 10 feet of each other. That'd be great.
Hey, I don't think you want it, Elliot. I'm just gonna let you know. I don't think you want it.
Wait a minute, you're probably right. So you said you were on the service since 2014. So I've never asked you this question. And since we're both guys, I can ask you, how old are you, Chris?
Oh, I'm 33.
Oh, so yeah, so that's quite a. I'm 48, so I got you by 15 years. So I'm probably a little rusty, but we'll see if it ever happens. We'll see.
Hey, I'm a little rusty too. We'll have to get together and start a band, the iRacing Warriors band.
A band, drummer and drummer. There we go. People will love that.
Oh yeah.
There's a really important question that we always ask everybody. Only one person, and that would be Alonzo King, has got it half right. So I'm going to give you the chance to get it right. And the question is, past or present, or both, who's your favorite NASCAR driver?
Ooh, I'd have to go with Mark Martin. That's what my dad raised me on.
Nice.
I think his, you go back and as a kid, I watched him, growing up watching the 6 Valvoline car. My first race was 1998. Where Rusty Wallace spun Jeff Gordon and the crowd went wild, and I was pretty much hooked there. But that was in Richmond. But yeah, I've always been a Mark Martin fan. You look back on it, the more you learn all his knowledge he had about the cars and the respect he had in the garage. Well,
you are without a doubt the first person to get that question right. So,
oh really?
You win that one too.
Awesome, yes, cool. I'll take that.
You didn't pick a Hendrick driver. God.
Oh, goodness.
So you get that question right. Everybody else, I don't know.
So, I'd
So,
have failed it if you'd asked me who my favorite is currently, because I've been pulling for Larson there, but I'm glad you
oh
didn't ask that.
no. Now I got to say you only got it half right. Jeez Louise.
Oh, wait, I take that back. You can just edit that out, I'm sure.
Mark Martin was one of my favorites growing up. He's still obviously not racing anymore, but he travels around in his big Class A RV, and you see him on videos every once in a while. So, absolutely a good choice.
That's really cool.
Quick little knowledge. We mentioned Roush, so I always like to do this. I'm from Southwest Ohio, the Cincinnati area, but I actually live east of Cincinnati a good ways, and just a county over is Adams County, and there's a little mud stain on the map called Manchester, Ohio, which is about 20, 25 minutes from me, and that's where Jack Roush grew up.
Cool.
There you go.
Yay! So, Rick, what we usually do from here is we go on, we talk about this weekend NASCAR and kind of give our opinions and do our clear, not clear section. You're more than welcome to join us if you want to stay on the podcast.
Absolutely. I'll sit here and hang out. I might not have anything to say worth a darn, but I'll try.
Well, you got to add something because we're going to be scratching ourselves. It was not the most exciting weekend for NASCAR. But before we go there, let's talk about Le Mans. I mean, that's typically something that I don't know about you guys, but I hear about it. I may read about it. I won't really pay attention to it until this year when NASCAR entered a next-gen Cup car, well, not quite, kind of a modified version, into the 62 field, and they finished in the 39th out of 62, which is a huge accomplishment. They ran for 2,400 miles, and that says a lot to just walk in pretty much out of the blue and competing against all kinds of different types of cars in that lineup, and that was pretty amazing.
Hearing that car go by made Le Mans cool for the first time, and I can't tell you when. I wish we could play, maybe you can, Rick, maybe you could stick a little edit in here, but I wish we could play the sound when you hear all the little sports, I say little, but all the sports cars go by, and they kind of sound like Indy cars. And then this big rumble comes by when the NASCAR, the Garage 56 entry comes in. They did have a really good race. I think you said they finished 39th. They had a transaxle failure in the 22nd hour or something like that. So they would have finished a little higher than they did, but it was really cool to hear the car anyway.
I mean, they had some great drivers. You had Jimmy Johnson that participated. You had Jenson Button, who was also there. And the two-time Le Mans winner, Mike Rockenfeller, was also as part of the driving team. So they had some great personalities as far as who were piloting the car, really gave it the best possible chance for success. And frankly, you know what? They survived. I mean, if they choose to do this next year with other teams, that would be a statement.
I'd also like to point out, how well the pit crew did too. They put down a 10-second pit stop during their little competition they had. I believe it was on Friday night, or maybe it was Thursday night. And they were up there with all the LMP cars, their pit stops, and they're jacking up both sides of the cars, and the rest of them. So that was pretty cool to see those guys compete with the best and do so well.
Oh, yeah, because most of those cars, they basically stick an air hose in the top of the car and little pistons come down and lift the car up off the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And, being a NASCAR, they did it the old-fashioned way and took the jack on both sides and, almost beat the time, top times they had. I believe they were like 5th or 6th overall in times when it came to all the different pit stops. So, yeah, it just shows you just how much, how competitive the sport is in general. NASCAR, it's pretty amazing.
Real quick before we switch, do either one of you guys know, is this something they plan to continue next year and on in the future?
I don't know. I know that there was an interview with Jim France there and Rick Hendrick, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to continue it, whether this was just a one-off, hey, let's go do something, which is what they did, or is this just a taste of what's to come? Because they weren't competing against anybody there. It was the Garage 56 entry was in a class by itself. But that's not to say that next year they could take the knowledge that they built here, and other teams besides Hendrick, obviously here, could enter a car in next year.
Well, it was definitely cool. I kind of hope they do, even if it's just kind of for research every year or for testing the limits of some of the things like the motor. And one last thing, I know I mentioned how cool it was to hear the car go by. So look that up if you haven't. But there's also a picture if you go on Twitter. Rick, you shared it in our little group chat earlier, but where it shows like all the cars kind of lined up on the course or on pit road, and you see the car 56, the Garage 56 car, kind of sitting towards the back, and it just looks like a bear amongst a bunch of sheep.
Well, it looks like, just if you can imagine your normal car parked in your driveway surrounded by a bunch of go-karts, because it was like that big of a difference between those other LMP cars and other things that were competing at Le Mans versus what the Garage 56 entry looked like. So it was pretty wild.
Yeah, I imagine with the success they had this weekend, I'm sure we'll see them back next year and years to come. I look forward to it too.
All right, on to this week at Sonoma. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just, look, I love NASCAR. I love the events. I'm a fan of nearly every series. I enjoy the drivers, the competitiveness, what we see on track. But there are just some tracks, and frankly, for that matter, road courses that it's not my thing. Not a fan. Never have been.
I've enjoyed all the road courses since we switched to this car, and I know we're talking about Xfinity, so I guess I'm kind of skipping. But Xfinity raced to Portland the prior week, and it was a great race. This one was just the Kyle Larson snoozer.
Well, until he clipped the tire bundle in 11 and yanked the wheel out of his hand and he slipped back. I mean, the great news. So I guess we'll still kind of catch back up here. So Xfinity ran the DoorDash 250 at Sonoma. That was a Saturday race. As Elliot said, Kyle Larson dominated 56 laps, swept the stages, and then he made a mistake, and he wound up slipping back to third, lost a few spots, and then, Eric Almirola, who is running for RSS Racing, wins.
Yeah, he ended up winning. I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris. I'm sorry. But
you're fine.
Eric ended up winning. Kyle actually finished third. Was it AJ that finished second, or who finished second? Do you recall?
I think that's exactly. I think it was AJ that finished second. I'll look it up while we're sitting here talking.
Dare we say before Chris talks about his nowadays favorite driver, dare we say, as I said a week or two ago, I think it was about Kyle Larson. Maybe not. Maybe it's Chase Elliott. Kyle, after 53 laps of leading and making it boring, ran out of talent in turn 11 and hit some tires that had been sitting there the entire race. Go ahead, Chris.
I really don't have much to say on that, Elliot. As a fan, you're going to get crap for it. Larson's under a microscope. He's definitely known to be one of the best drivers, if not the best out there. So, when he messes up, it's a lot bigger for him. He gets a lot more crap, and I mean, deservedly, because he is so good. And it was pretty hard to see, that happen. My buddy had a theory that maybe like he had, when he got into the tire there, something grabbed hold of the tire and let it loose. And that's why he just went off course so bad. I'm not too sure about all that. From what I saw, it just looks like an incident that cost him the race. And,
Kyle would be my favorite. He is my favorite Hendrick driver. I think he's the best of the four. But that's like picking my favorite vegetable. It just... Yeah.
So Almirola won. AJ Allmendinger was second. Larson finished third. Ty Gibbs finished fourth, and Parker Klingerman finished fifth.
Yeah, and not to beat a dead horse, but the race, I guess I'm going to compare it to Portland the week before. There just wasn't any action on. It just was I don't know. It was just a boring race. Gives road courses a bad name for some reason this week.
Well, how about Almirola winning? I mean, that's pretty amazing in itself. You don't see him running the Xfinity series too often, and for him to jump in and get his first road course race or road course win in NASCAR, that's pretty exciting for an unexciting race.
Yeah, I think isn't the car he ran owned by Sieg?
Yeah, it was the Sieg.
It was.
I don't know if it's Sieg Racing, but it was the Sieg family car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great for them. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know how much it actually does for Eric. Maybe it makes him feel good that he won a race that Kyle should have won, but found a tire. But yeah, it's great for Sieg Racing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a snarky comment by one of the brothers there about that he should have been in the car, but I guess he was saying that they got their first win. He didn't even know it. I guess he was in the back at the hauler, and but they were happy to get the win.
That had to have been Brad. If it was in Brian, I don't think Ryan would have said something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall who said it. I guess I could look it up while we're sitting here talking, but it was pretty hilarious. All right. All that excitement in the Xfinity series onto the Cup series, which was just as exciting. So Martin Truex Jr. holds off former Joe Gibbs Racing teammate Kyle Busch to pick up his fourth win at the road course. Sunday marked the 11th time in NASCAR Cup Series history that the dynamic duo nailed down a 1-2 finish. Dating back to 2013, Truex led 51 laps, Kyle Busch for 17, and that further illustrated Toyota's dominance.
Yeah, this race was almost a mirror image of the Xfinity race. Kind of boring. Martin was out front for most of the time. But, I've looked with Kyle Busch this year, and he has 3 wins now. He's making, Austin Dillon's lucky that his last name is Dillon, because he's making him look really, really bad. But it made me realize something. I realized this with, why can't I think of who I'm thinking of? The quarterback for the Patriots, Tom Brady. I realized this with Tom Brady when he went to the Buccaneers, and I've realized this now with Kyle Busch. And I know you really like Gibbs Racing, and I like Martin Truex a lot, Rick. But now that Kyle is with RCR, I don't hate him quite as much as I used to. I'm happy that he's doing as well as he is, and that he's able to take a car that Reddick did okay in the car last year. He's doing terrible this year. He did okay in the car last year, but RCR hasn't been competitive for really a long time. I mean, Austin Dillon wins a race every once in a blue moon, but Kyle's just jumped in and not only has he not lost a step, but he's picked up 2 or 3 steps from previous years.
I mean, no one ever said that Childress built a bad car, but he's had a lot of B-class drivers, and Kyle Busch was really he's just a talent. There's no denying the guy who was, although, everybody says he's lost a step. Well, maybe, but of course, this was a guy who ran 4 to 5 competitive races every week on everything. And now he's focused on this ride with Childress. He's doing phenomenal. But I think he brought a lot to that team. He brought someone in the driver's seat that the engineering team knew what he was doing, and he could tell them what they were missing, which I think is what they were lacking with the other drivers that they had. They didn't have someone that could tell them exactly what the car was doing in this turn and in that turn.
Well, maybe that'll rub off on Austin, and he can learn a little bit then. But we're Mark Truex won the race, and we're talking about Kyle Busch. but it's just whoever says, the people that are saying he's lost a step, they're full of it. He's only 38 or something like that. I don't think there's any chance he's lost a step yet.
Yeah, I mean, look at the guys who won. I mean, Truex. Everybody last year was talking about his last season, and he's going to retire. I think he'd be crazy. He's doing just having a phenomenal season.
I think that had more to do with his personal life and things that were going on, and obviously that I have no idea personally what him and was it Shelly? Sherry, what they were going through. But my guess would be that his contemplating that was preempted by what was going on in his personal life.
Well, it certainly has made a complete turnaround for 2023, and I hope it continues. Again, I've never held back. I mean, I'm a big Joe Gibbs Racing fan, and Joe. For me, I think of Joe Gibbs as not the man, but as the team and as the organization, as kind of like the last vestige of your classic NASCAR team owner. You've got teams like Truex, Bass Pro Shops. They're there pretty much for the season. FedEx with Denny Hamlin, they're there and renewed for next year. And Monster Energy. These are sponsorships that they really haven't had to go out and chase like a lot of other teams. I've got this sponsor for 10 races and this guy for 5 races. They've got classic, iconic sponsors on their cars, and they continue to be successful.
Well, they definitely do, but obviously, in my opinion, Bass Pro Shops is there for Martin. I think they're going to have probably some trouble with that when Martin does retire. FedEx obviously is connected to Denny and always will be, probably until he retires. And right offhand, I can't think of who Christopher Bell's sponsor is. It DeWalt? I think he does switch spot. Doesn't he have to switch occasionally because he doesn't have full season sponsorship though?
I think that car rotates with a number of different sponsors,
which is what a lot of other teams have to do, including RCR. So I think not to beat. I don't know why I have a little bit of a negative disposition towards the Gibbs team because, dare I say, the Washington Redskins. I grew up in Cincinnati, so I'm a Bengals fan, but we didn't win too many games, especially in the 90s. So I was a Washington Redskins fan. Hold on. So I was a Washington Redskins fan, and obviously Joe Gibbs was the coach in the 80s, and then again I think at the late 90s, early 2000s. So I was a Gibbs fan, but they're a great team. I think they'll have trouble or have to change their sponsorship model in the next 5 or 6 years as they lose Denny and Martin. Chris, what do you think of the Cup race we had at Sonoma? Got anything for us?
I don't have too much besides the fact I got to see Denny wreck himself, which is I love Denny off the track. I think he's one of the smarter guys, has some of the best input when it comes to racing on the track. I'm not the biggest fan. Maybe it's because almost every single race I go to live, he wins. I don't know why. I'm just at the point I'm going to just quit going to see races live because, I'd like to see someone else win for a change. But it was pretty cool seeing him tear that car up coming at that last turn, towards the start-finish line.
I'm glad you mentioned that because earlier I said Kyle Larson ran out of talent. Denny basically admitted it during his interview out of the care center that he just lost track of where he was. I mean, we've done it all on iRacing at some point and ran into the back of somebody or ran into the outside wall, and he just lost track of where he was behind, I think, Kyle Larson, and smacked the wall. Ran out of talent.
Yeah, and he's got plenty of talent. There's no doubt in that, and it just goes to show you, just how on the edge these drivers are every time they race every weekend. So,
wasn't he on the pole?
For me, I'm not sure. I believe Kyle Larson had the pole this weekend for Sonoma.
I don't know the answer to that, but going back to Sonoma, and we're going to keep racing there as NASCAR is going to keep racing there. Been racing there seems like forever. I have a short memory. I don't remember previous year's races. I know there's only 2 passing zones, really. It's turn 7 and turn 11.
Hamlin was on the pole.
He was on the pole.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so he beats that stat that I was talking about earlier about Kyle Larson being on the pole since 2016. So I guess he is dethroned him now. So I apologize for being wrong about that.
No worries. Larson started 16th.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a big jump from going to starting on the pole every year to 16th. But
look, Michael McDowell, that's another story on amongst itself. McDowell started 3rd and finished 7th.
Yeah, he's been doing excellent this year. You know,
he really has.
Even last year, too.
He really has been performing well almost every week. What did he end up 3rd in this race? Does that sound right, guys?
7th.
7th. Okay. Well, he ran in the top 5 most of the day and had a really great race.
Yeah, he started 3rd. So he's currently he's ranked 19th. So he's barking at the door. So
yeah.
Well, he's got a chance, and obviously he's really well, does really good at super speedways. So
Ricky Stenhouse too. I'm sorry to cut you off, Elliot.
No, you're all right. Cut me off all you want.
I just want to say how well Ricky Stenhouse has been doing. It was a shame what happened to him with Austin Cindric, Austin Dillon last week. He got the brunt of that because he's been doing so well. Won the Daytona 500 and. Every week you just see him up there running the top 10, top 5 at times too. And I'm not sure where he finished this weekend at Sonoma. I would imagine he had a good run the way
12th.
He's been running. 12th, yeah, that's a great finish for him. You don't usually see him doing too well at road courses, but it's pretty cool to see he's been consecutive. This next gen car has turned a lot of teams around. You're seeing a lot more competitors, last year and this year than what you'd imagine, any other time before.
Well,
so.
It's also a good showing for some of these smaller teams like JTG, which is what Stenhouse runs for. And really, for that matter, when you look back at Michael McDowell, of course, he is running in Front Row Motorsports. Again, another team that's not one of the top 4, or the big 4. So, But just as a rundown for the finish for Sonoma, Truex obviously was the winner. Busch finished 2nd. Joey Logano finished 3rd. Chris Buescher 4th. Chase Elliott 5th. AJ Allmendinger 6th. Michael McDowell, as we were just talking about, 7th. Larson finished 8th. Bell in 9th, and Chastain in 10th.
Clear. Not clear. Clear. Not clear. Not clear. Not clear.
All right, now it's time for this week's segment, Clear or Not Clear. And each week we bring to you our opinions as basically just armchair quarterbacks watching what's happening during the race or in the news. And in our first segment, Chase Briscoe winds up with a level 3 violation for a modified cooling duct.
As far as the penalty goes, even though it really wasn't a performance-enhancing modification, I'm clear. I'm fine with NASCAR doing these penalties. I think the best part about this car that they're trying to do is make it equal for everybody. Chris just mentioned how it kind of evened out the field when we went to the car. They're going to have to keep doing stuff like this to keep it that way. The teams with more money and more resources and better drivers, if you will, more resources, they're going to get ahead of the lower tier teams, just like in the old cars. So I'm clear on the penalty. I think it sucks for Chase and the team, but that's just the way it goes.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
I'm just glad to see NASCAR sticking, to its guns. If you're gonna penalize other teams for the wrong parts, you got to stick to it. It's a heavy fine for sure, and it's pretty wild to think that it's a cooling duct is a modification that costs them. I'm sure SHR did it just to save money. My guess obviously, but built that own part or whatnot, but just something so insignificant that, really it has no effect on the car and how it's going to drive or handle. And you get such a big penalty just for modifying a part, from a cooling duct. I think it's good on NASCAR for being strict about it, because, that's what we want, is to see these cars be as even as possible and have better racing. We want to see guys who usually don't finish up front. So, even when it comes down to something as small as, that duct, I'm glad to see, he gets penalized. Obviously, they're not too happy about it. I'm sure it was a big fine, money-wise, and they lost a bunch of points for it. But good on NASCAR for sticking to their guns.
So I'm going to take an opposite opinion here because I'm not clear with the penalty. I think that it was an insignificant cooling duct that was there to cool off the driver's area. In my opinion, that fine was ridiculous. It pretty much killed their entire season with the amount of points that were taken away from the 14 team. I think that's just crazy. I would say that, in my opinion, I would recommend that they begin to divide this car up into what's a performance, or define the penalty differently and to say, was this a performance enhancement that was in effect cheating, or was this a non-performing or a non-performance enhancing part that's inconsequential, that wouldn't have effect. It doesn't affect aero. It doesn't affect speed. It doesn't affect the performance of the vehicle on the track. It was a minor modification of a cooling duct inlet. Now, that being said, they did not use the parts that were supplied, and that could be, that's clearly where they came down, because you didn't use the part that was provided. But the side-by-side difference between these two parts was infinitesimal. So
you're not clear on the severity of the penalty, not the penalty itself.
I'm not clear on the severity of the penalty, and I think that there needs to be a delineation between what is a performance enhancement that is clearly there to cheat, to gain an advantage over the competitors, versus something that's there to make the driver more comfortable in the car, or to move more air through the car for the drivers, or again, a non-performance enhancement change.
I want to agree with you, but NASCAR's kind of made it clear that they have a real simple process for getting these modifications okay. You just call them, and somebody comes out, and you show them the part, and they say yes or no. So why Stewart-Haas wouldn't have done that on something as stupid, I don't know what the right word is, as something as small as trying to keep the driver cool and risk an L3 penalty, which is modifying, these parts. Why they just wouldn't I don't know why they wouldn't make the phone call.
They didn't go to the effect where they were putting stickers and labels and serial numbers on the part, but they clearly modified the opening of that. But hey, I get it. I think the process is that they go to Ford, and then Ford takes that change to NASCAR, and then if NASCAR approves it, they go back to Ford, and then Ford goes back to the team. But regardless, you're right. There is a process for it. I don't know why they chose to not do it. I thought they probably felt it was nothing, but there it is. So, all right. There was an article that was published. I'm drawing a blank on who wrote it, with Bubba Wallace insinuating that there is a double standard in regards to himself when he flipped the bird at the camera, and the blowback from that, where he felt that he's being treated differently when other drivers did that, and they have over the years. But that's
well. I'm not clear on Bubba saying this. Is there a double standard? For the vast majority, excuse me. For the vast majority of fans, there isn't a double standard. We talked about it when it happened. We all basically gave him a pass and said, it's a nothing burger. But the way people act on the internet is just the way of the internet. If Bubba's actually trying to make a big deal out of this with this interview, then he's just trying to take advantage of the idiots on the internet, if you will. So not clear.
I haven't read the interview, but obviously Bubba, takes a lot of grief from people online. Like Elliot saying, the fan base can be pretty brutal sometimes. And I think a lot of it has to do with, these newer kids that just want to be heard and just want to be edgy, honestly. I feel like most real fans understand and, if they don't like Bubba, it's not because of the color of his skin. It's because what he does on track, and they just don't pull for him. You're more mature fans that are actually there for the racing. And then you got, in my opinion, these kids that just show up and then just want to start crap, who just swarm all these Twitter posts and make it more of a political issue than it should be. Obviously, Bubba's under a microscope, being one of two black drivers that I know of currently in NASCAR. And, as a fellow human being, I do feel for him because everything he does is scrutinized. And,
Yeah, but how much of this stuff does he, with the way he acts on camera, the way he reacts when things happen, even myself personally, I am not a huge fan of Bubba. But you mentioned that there were two black drivers. I assume you're referencing Raja in the truck series.
Yes,
I love him. I wish he could win every weekend. His interviews are great. His attitude is great. Hopefully he gets better and better and can move up. I want to see him do that. This article and this interview, I think Bubba's just kind of keeping the pot stirred by bringing this up because, there are racist people and there are jackasses, but not the majority of people. And like I said, the way of the internet, you sit behind a keyboard and you become a racist because you can say stupid shit and nobody can say anything to you.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah. For me, I'm just not clear on what happened here. But as a dad of two biracial children, I know it's not easy, but at the same time, you are an elite driver at the highest level. Just let it go and race and enjoy the benefits of the talent that you've been given and go.
If for me, honestly, like I said, trying to put myself in his shoes, I agree to that point. I don't think Bubba necessarily wants to even tend to think of as he doesn't, it's not like he's out there looking for everyone to cheer for him and pull for him. I just imagine as a human being, being under such scrutiny, people have a pretty good opinion on him. You either love him or you hate him. And he's constantly having to hear it. I can only imagine in my position, you see the same hateful shit online, eventually you get tired of it too. And, you might play into those games also. He's only human. I would get annoyed with half the things that, they've said about him if it was to me, and let's just face it, he is in a pretty peculiar situation being, the only black driver and the top of our sport, that we love and we watch every weekend. So when it all comes down to it, we don't know what it's like. So it's hard for us to say, how we would act, because we don't have that pressure. We just don't know what it's like. And, pull for him or not pull for him. But I feel like people should have a little bit of decency and a little respect for the fact that he has to deal with a lot more things that, we don't know about, I personally don't like seeing him being so hard on himself after the races. I want him to do good and want him to do, not give a crap about all the haters and, see him perform like he should. But at the same time, I try to put myself in his shoes, and I read it all online all the time, all the ridiculous things people say, and I'm sure, as much as he hears it, it's got to get to you somehow. He's got a lot of weight on his shoulders when it comes to that, and hopefully he can mature to the point where that's just not an issue for him anymore, and he can just go out and perform. Because obviously it does. It's a burden for him right now, but the sport, it's demanding. So, hopefully he can not have to worry about the political side and go out there and start winning some races. because you see a lot of people question if his job's going to be up for, grabs here soon because he's not performing like expected. You'd imagine him being in top tier equipment. He should go out there and win, pretty often. But, it's time will tell.
He does run well. He does run well about every week. And then, makes a mistake or just gets in somebody else's stuff. So, he is running relatively up front, not as well as the Gibbs crew as a whole. And he probably runs better than Tyler Reddick most of the time. So he does run well, but seems to find a way to not finish well most of the time.
Yeah. Well, here's the hoping, at least for me, hoping he can turn that around. See some good finishes coming out, for that team. Shout out to J.R. Houston. He's my buddy. He's a car engineer on the 2311 team. He's Bubba Wallace's car engineer. So he runs FCRL. Yeah. The league.
JR.
So.
All right. The last clear or not clear topic, especially in the Xfinity series, drivers manipulating the racing line by moving the tire barrels out of their way.
I'm clear. This car's still, they've softened it up some. They're still working on that so that it has some crumple zones so the drivers don't get it hurt. But it's still a tank. And if I can move some barrels to give myself an advantage, I'm going to do that. So I'm clear. I kind of wish NASCAR had a little monkey or something that would run out every lap and move the barrels back where they were. But they weren't going to do that. Maybe next year they need to have some type of concrete. I'm thinking of those concrete things they lay when they're doing road work on the road. I guess that wouldn't work because we got to have softer barriers there. But maybe NASCAR needs to figure something out. But as far as the driver's concerned, I'm clear. Move them tires.
Chris?
I can say just as an iRacer, any advantage you can find on track where you're not going to get penalized for it, use it. And you got to do it if you want to win, if you want to be faster, if you want to shave some time off those laps, you got to do it. So I'd also have to be clear on this one.
All right, I'm clear as well, but I really think that NASCAR is going to put a stop to that next time around through Sonoma. They may pour a little Quickcrete in those tires and make them a little bit more challenging to move them out of the way. Maybe
they'll put some turtles all the way around. The turtle bumps all the way around turn 11. But wouldn't it have been great if there was like 6 guys standing in the middle of turn 11 and every lap they'd run and push the tires back to where they were? That would have been more. That would have been more exciting than the race.
You can make that a fan experience. You can, you can volunteer to be a tire barrel guy at Sonoma.
Six lucky fans. Yeah.
All right, that wraps up our 8th podcast of the season. I want to thank our guest, Christopher Worrell, for hanging around with us while we knock this one out. And, next, tune in tonight for the Tech4Troops series. We head to Chicagoland Speedway for the Windy City 240. That's 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's broadcast on the IWM Broadcast Network. You can find that on YouTube at youtube.com/IWM Broadcast Network.
Yeah, like you said, Rick, we're going to be at Chicagoland Speedway tonight. Big, wide, fast racetrack. I wish they still raced on it in real life. It always makes for great racing. Chris, are you going to be there tonight on that track?
I sure will. I was going to say, if I'm able to get the win again, maybe you guys can have me back for next week. I'm going to try to do that because I've enjoyed my time here talking with you guys. Plan on racing hard tonight and hopefully giving y'all something to talk about next week.
Well, if you win again, maybe we'll make it a podcast doubleheader. Thanks for joining us tonight and giving us your opinions and thoughts.
Elliot, Rick, thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys.
You got it. All right, folks. Good night.